I'm building a 6-foot by 6-foot by 4-inch concrete pad for our air conditioner. And we're going to be using the dry pour method today. That's right, dry pour. Never done it before. Done a lot of research on it. Learned a lot through this process. And I figured because I'm new at it, I can impart a first-timer's point of view. Spoiler alert, preparation is key. Watch what leads up to this. In our last video, we had to change the grade because over the last 40 years, the ground has settled and the water was draining towards the house. We had to correct that first. I have watched a ton of dry pour videos on YouTube and Facebook. And what I hope to do here is put together all of the information that I have learned by watching others succeed and others fail. And with my basic understanding of concrete and how it works as a chemical reaction, I think I can impart some good information here that will be beneficial to all of the first-time concrete pourers out there that want to do it a little bit easier than mixing it by hand in a wheelbarrow. First off, I want to acknowledge that we are going against the directions that are clearly written on the side of the bag of the concrete. Having said that, our project turned out really well. We did two things that a lot of the other YouTubers don't do in their dry pour, and I think that's one of the reasons, I think that's two of the reasons that our project turned out so well and is going to last so long. So make sure you watch through this video. I'll tell you all of what we done right and all of what we done wrong. Let's talk about what dry pour is good for and what it's not good for. First off, I think it's really good for external pads, sidewalks, patios, stuff of that nature. However, if it's going to need a vapor barrier, that's when I think that you can get into some trouble. Let's talk about what happens when the cement in the concrete reacts with water. It forms crystalline compounds and it binds the aggregates, the sand and the gravel together. And this happens over a period of weeks or days, but truly concrete never dries. It never evaporates all of the water out of it. It actually hydrates and balances the amount of moisture in the concrete. It's really important to get all the organic materials out. So I go through this several times where I come back and make sure there's no leaves or sticks. Anything you can get out is going to make it better. The reason that's so important is if those pieces of organic material are in the concrete, they will rot and then they'll create voids, and those will lead to stress cracks. I think to make this successful, you really need to slow down, make a plan, and think this out. So right here, all I'm doing is leveling the ground out where I'm going to put the board for my forms. And this is just a rough end. After I get the boards in place, I'll level them. But also, I need to, once you start, you have to stay started. You can't just start and stop and start and stop. Once you start this project, you have to continue on until it's done. That's why it's so important to have a plan. Again, our pad is going to be 6-foot by 6-foot by 4 inches. And my boards are only 3.5. However, I'm going to raise them up off the ground just a little bit. I'll get that 4 inches. I'm going to cut 2 boards that are 72 inches long, plus another 1.5 inches for the overlap, and then 1 board that is 72 inches long. And then I'm going to cut me some stakes. And you want to use 2x4s, I think, because once you hammer them in the ground, they're going to be very stable. Professionals are going to use metal stakes, but obviously we're doing a dry pour, so we're not professionals. And we don't have that kind of stuff laying around, but you can pick up an extra 2x4 for a little or nothing. I picked up this digital level, I guess a couple of years ago. It's been the handiest thing to get, pretty accurate. And what I'm doing is looking for a 1 degree down. And all I want to do is make sure when the form is finally set up and we pour the concrete, that when it rains, the water's always going to drain away from the house. You don't have to have a huge drop, but I'm using this and I chose a 1 degree. You could do 1 or 2 and probably be fine. A 1 degree drop equals basically a 1/4 inch drop every 12 inches. So it's a nice slope, but it's not an eyesore. If you want a little bit more aggressive slope, then obviously go to like a 2-degree. You don't have to have a Mini X, but we have one. So instead of, using that old manual shovel, which I think is pretty much a Roman torture tool, I think I'll stick with my little Mini X when I can. Our AC installer asked for the pad to be one wall brick below the ductwork that comes out of the wall. So that's how I'm setting up that first 2x4. I'm using that one brick down as my starting point. And then I'm raising the other end up till I get to the, 1.0, reasonably close, 0.9, 1.1. You're going to be fine. Some concrete jobs have to be spot on. I mean, within tenths of an inch accuracy. This is not one of those jobs. It just needs to sheet water away from the house and also be strong enough to support a stationary air conditioner unit that weighs about 500-600 pounds. Let's talk about concrete mesh or rebar, or just running your concrete with the aggregate that's in it. For our application, we're not putting in any rebar or concrete mesh, and the reason being is this is going to be a stationary, low weight usage, and we have got several. We have made several pours over the years without any rebar or concrete mesh that's held up it's still holding up. So if you're going to be driving cars or heavy loads over it, then I would probably say go ahead and use a rebar or use a concrete mesh. But in our case, it's just not necessary in this job. Once you get your form built, and also prior to putting the last stake in, you want to do a cross measurement where you measure from one corner to the other. What you're doing is you're measuring for square. Again, this is not rocket science. If it's out an inch one way or the other, it's not going to matter. You're probably not going to notice it by your eye. In my case, we come out about a 1/4 inch out, and I was able to just bump one of the 2x4's stakes over, and we got that figured out. Put the last stake in, and we leveled it. Then we run into, we put a 2x4 across, and we run into a point where we see that there was a little mound here that was taller than I wanted it to be. I want it to be at least 4 inches deep. I'm okay if there's a few areas that are over 4 inches deep. Concrete's fairly inexpensive, and this is actually where the unit's going to set, and all the weight's going to be setting right here. So this is important to me. The first tip I'm going to give you is right here. Once you get your form ready, before you start pouring, clean up around your form so that you can walk and not twist your ankle with the clod. So go ahead and clean up all the way around your form. I promise you it will make the job go so much easier, because you're not trying to walk around with a 50 or 80 pound bag of concrete while walking in ruts. Just makes it all easier. We'll put a board across it, see here to see how much concrete's going to be under it. Oh, really close. 0.5. That's pretty good. Use a little Sawzall to cut the 2x4s off, and make sure you use a sharp blade so it cuts without too much pressure. And you want to cut those 2x4s off at a downwards angle so they don't interfere with your 2x4 that you're going to run across the top for screening. I don't think I showed this, but I went through, packed down each one of the stakes, and I also went through and checked the level again. And then again, I went back and I cleaned up around my work site, because I did not want to have to walk over all of the rocks and the things in the way. I just wanted to be able to walk easily with those bags of concrete. Ended up moving over 2 tons, or excuse me, I ended up moving over 2,000 pounds of concrete by hand. Here I'm doing my last check for organics. Up under the ductwork, there was some leaves and stuff left over. Again, it's very important to get your organics out, because they will rot and leave voids. And wherever there's a void, the concrete will crack. I'm going to reiterate this again. You spend most of your time doing the prep. The prep is the most important part of the work. And then when you actually go to put the concrete in, it's really easy. It doesn't take very long. I mean, the prep work was considerably the longest portion of this whole process. Here's the first thing that the YouTubers that I watch leave out. It's probably the most important thing, and is wet the pad where you're going to pour the dry concrete. Really wet it. I mean, soak it. Let that ground get soaked up. Do it overnight. Whatever you need to do if your ground's really dry. We've had a lot of rain, so we weren't that dry. But make sure that that place that you're going to put the concrete is very wet before you start. It'll cause the concrete to come loose quicker or easy. So this is an important portion too. This makes the forms release. You want to put like a WD-40 or some sort of lubrication oil. I have found that a silicone spray is amazing. When you go to take the forms off, they just slip right off. The concrete does not bind to the wood. I really appreciate you watching the video to this point. And I know this is kind of a hook, but we try to get view duration. We try to get people to watch the whole video. So if you hang on with us, I'm going to tell you the number 2 thing that I've done that makes this concrete last. Probably not what you're going to expect, but I guarantee it's worth waiting for the information. At this point, there's no secret. This is just you're ripping bags open, pouring the concrete. We had a good wind blowing that day, so I always made sure that I was upwind of concrete. You can get sick by breathing concrete dust, so just keep that in mind. If you're in an area where it's indoors and there's a lot of concrete dust, wear a mask, wear a respirator. It's probably worth it. But in our case, the wind was keeping the area really clean for us. And again, like this, there's no secret here. Just pour the concrete out and then start screeding. And you see here, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'll pour a little concrete, start screeding until I get that flat surface I'm looking for. Now, I did have an issue with the 2x4 screeding. I had to turn it on its side to get up under that vent. And I didn't think that through. If you don't have something over the top of it, it's a lot easier to work with. So that took a little more time than I would expected. I'm closer to 60 now than I am 50. So I recommend 50-pound bags of concrete. You can get 50s and 80s, and I probably could muscle through the 80s, but the 50s are so much easier to work with and, just easier to handle. So I want to go at this as if you've never worked with concrete before. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but it's really important when you're working with concrete to wear gloves. And again, what'll happen if you don't, the concrete will literally suck the moisture out of your skin as you're working throughout the day. And then over the next couple of days, your thumbs and your fingertips will split because it actually, dehydrated your fingertips to the point that the cells died. So always wear gloves. Right here is where I'm really starting to get excited. You can tell that it's, you see it happening. It's like, even though it's not wet and it's not hardened yet, but it's starting to take shape. And I got really excited here. I was feeling accomplished. You guys let me know if you feel the same way. When I do little projects like this and I get done with them and I sit back, I do feel a sense of, instant gratification. I've done something. I'm proud of this. Every time I'm weed eat out here around the new air conditioner, I'm going to, want to see this, and it's going to make me feel good. Now we're to the point where we're just, screeding that last little bit of concrete off the top of the form and making it flush with the top of the form. You can really put a lot of work into this and really have a nice finish, even though you're doing a dry pour. But in our case, we were just using we just used a 2x4 to screed a basic finish and then started misting it. Now this is the ticket. When you start misting it, it's really it's a mist. You don't want to shower. You want to mist it. Take your time right here. This is important. Take your time and water it slow, because what happened is if you make the water go too fast, you will literally wash the concrete away from the aggregate on top, and then you'll have loose particles on top. So it's really important just to let the water hose go very slow. Like I said, a mist. A mist is important. Hydrating the concrete is the key, and that's why we sprayed the ground prior to. So basically, water is wicking up from the ground and causing the concrete to start the process from the bottom. And then on top, we are also, we've wet it really well. Now, some people will say just mist it and then come back. For you just barely make it change colors. I don't agree with that. Once the concrete drying process starts or hydration process start, it needs to have the water that it needs. So what I recommend is continually spray just a fine mist, and you're going to be out there for a while. But again, you didn't have to mix this concrete. So I constantly over the next couple hours, I kept misting it really lightly, and then here, as you see, I'm spraying it. This is about an hour or so after the first wetting, and it starts a hard process. Then I covered it up and let it stay there for about another hour and a half. Come back, and I missed it again, and I missed it every hour for 5 hours. And then what I did is that night I really wet it down. I mean, really wet it down, and then put the tarp back over it. And each time you see me coming back here, this is another hour. And I think this is the next morning. I'm misting it again. I just, you don't want it to make it droopy wet, but you want that concrete to be wet at the beginning. This is why the silicone spray is so good. You can see here, I'm not having any issues of pulling the forms off. I'm not damaging the concrete when I'm pulling the forms off. And also, this is about 2 days later, just so you know, about 48 hours has passed. But again, I've seen people struggle where the concrete actually bonds to the wood, and then they, trying to beat the wood off and end up taking a chunk out of the side of their concrete. So just that little bit of silicone spray, and it was literally no issue at all. You can see here where I bought that little rounding tool where it rounds over the edges. I think it puts a nice finish on it, and it also makes it less likely to chip. It also makes water, sheet off better. Now here we are at the secret. This is what I have never seen this done, and it's so easy. This is an acrylic concrete sealer, and what it's going to do, it does two things. Obviously, it keeps water from penetrating after it's sealed, but it also, during the beginning stages right now, we don't want this concrete to dry too fast, and it's a hot summer day. So I sprayed down the pad that morning, and then I'll let it get a base dry, and now I'm coming back and putting this acrylic concrete sealer on full strength. And this 6 foot by 6 foot pad, I put a full gallon of this stuff. Now, you don't have to go that crazy, but I coated it over. And what this is going to do is seal this thing for years and years to come. All concrete will fail over years, but just the way we've done this here, this is going to outlive me probably by 20 or 30 years. You see here, it turns white, but as it dries, the acrylic turns clear. And this is the finished product. I can't be more happy with it. It's rock solid. It's gonna provide service for us for years to come. Hey, leave us a comment. Tell us what you think, what we did right, what we did wrong. God bless. Have a great day.